I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to part 2 of the book study of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. As you will notice by now, it's only me here. Guess what could possibly be keeping Al from joining us? What possibly? It's something he's never encountered before. No. He's never encountered technical difficulties before whatsoever. Hopefully he'll figure this out. He says his virus blocker is blocking the site. You can tell it to allow the site, Al. You should be able to tell any kind of adware or virus blocker or whatever like that to allow the site. Of course, his computer is so so disease ridden anyway because of all these illegal movies he's pirating. So hopefully he'll get his butt in here and figure it out. Be nice to have him because it's kind of weird without him. So come on, Al, do what you can. I don't know if he's listening here. Let's see, live and waiting for you. All right. Welcome to the chat, though. Let's see who we've got in here. Let me adjust my mic stand here. Better see everybody. Muhammad, Owen Lister, welcome. Dark Stranger, Casey Scott, Green Lion Girl, Janice Seal, welcome everybody. And Matchstick, more people popping in. Don't know how much of a crowd we'll get tonight because everybody's doing their Star Wars Episode 9 trailer reactions right now. So we'll save that for tomorrow night on office hours, and we'll go through all of that and then the relevant geek news and everything like that. But now Al says, give me a few. Okay, so we'll give Al a few minutes then. Dark Stranger says, let's be honest, Al is absent because of too much Centaur on his computer. Probably. She'll see. Green Lion Girl said, will you talk about the Rise of Skywalker trailer, or do we have to wait until tomorrow for you to rip it apart? Yeah, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, I haven't really. There's that and some other geek news that we definitely should talk about. But tonight was preparing for the book stream, So had I known that Al was going to, pull my computer's sick, then I would have maybe prepped on something to talk about there. But, we will just sit here and vamp as we've done before. Mohammed says, how did your day go? Day went quite well, actually. Quite well. Had Alyssa for most of the day. And that was great. And then I did some things in the evening. So Phineas Sword Ashman said, I can give you an honest reaction to Star Wars. It's trash. That told us nothing about the story. Yeah, I did. I was surprised that they didn't grasp for more sentimental, straws or something like that. I know Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers was saying he wouldn't be surprised if they busted out the Ewoks or something with this one because they're desperate to try and get people to come see this movie. But we'll talk about all that tomorrow. Welcome, Daniel Heron. Phineas Sword Ashman, I just said, welcome everybody popping in here. So I'm really excited to talk about the second half of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And in this very stream, we're going to announce the next book for the study, as well as the for this Saturday. So that'll be pretty cool. Let me make sure I got this up here where I need it to be. Yeah. See, Al being here with us is nice because then he can talk. And while he's vamping, then I can search for things and get things ready. But Al. I don't know. I'm sure he'll be here in a few minutes. But I almost think that, let's just say that if something happened and he couldn't make it with us tonight, or his computer is just not cooperating, he doesn't know what to do, other than stop downloading every movie in the world. He's gone a little bit crazy. He's like, I found this movie. Like, Al, that's not safe. So we'll see. But if something happened and he just couldn't make it tonight, I would rather wait until he can be here, because I could do a book study on my own, sure, but that's something specific I would have to prepare for. That's like teaching a class, lecturing or something. If I know it's going to be discussion based, you prepare for it in a certain manner. But if you know you're going to be giving more of a lecture on it, then you prepare in that manner, you know. So having Al here is a different dynamic. So we'll see. Welcome, Casey Lark. Janice Steele said Al could use Linux in the Brave browser. I don't know much about computer. I just pay one of the big huge companies. I know you can probably do some free things or whatever, but I just make it easy, peace of mind. I'm not a computer guy, so you know. Yeah, Al should run a system file check. Yeah, Al should do a lot of things on his computer that he doesn't. So we shall see. I'm going to begin tomorrow night's office hours by asking Al what he thought of it. That'll be fun. It's going to be a good office hours tomorrow night, folks. Make sure you tune into that. Going to be all kinds of good stuff. So that's that. I guess one of the things we'll talk about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I was going to kind of save this towards the end a little bit, but yeah, you know, maybe we talk about at the beginning too, and it's kind of it colors the whole study and analysis of the story, and we're not going super in depth into stories on these book studies that we're doing, just kind of on YouTube and discussion based. But it's obviously a story. You know, the theme is the duality of man, or the other. You know, the double, and that's been a trope in romantic literature. Certainly, German Romanticism loved it, and Stevenson develops it in a way in this story that really evolves that trope and takes it somewhere new. And it's something, you know, I don't think we would have had a portrait of Dorian Gray without The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't think we would have had, okay, the werewolf mythos, you know, stories were already a thing. Obviously, they obviously predate Stevenson and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But I think Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde went a long way to color how we see the werewolf story, kind of what that developed into. You know, you think about the Werewolf of London. That was very much just a Jekyll and Hyde story. You know, and even Lon Chaney Jr.'s iconic Wolfman, you know, still has that kind of aspect to it. And it's the double. It's the double. It's the psychological double, you know, that shadow within. It's a fascinating take. And the thing is, the double had been a trope in Romanticism. It's in all these stories, but it's usually an evil from the outside. Like if you think about, I don't know if you ever read Edgar Allan Poe's William Wilson. You've got this double, this evil version of yourself, but it's not from inside you. It's from the outside. You know, it's some supernatural. It's a doppelganger. It's a supernatural or demonic or something like that. You know. Or somebody impersonating you, you know, a living person impersonating you. But Stevenson's really the first to go into the internal psyche and say, okay, this is your double, your evil double is a part of you. It's you. It's just as much you as the person you think you are. And there are all kinds of psychological resonances with this, right? So you've got, you know, Freud's ego, superego, and id. You got Jung's idea of the conscious, collective unconscious, and unconscious, or subconscious rather. So it's we see it all through here, and it's something that, well, I mean, you know, this is also about the period of time when psychology sort of developing too, a lot of those ideas and everything. So it's gonna be fascinating. If Alec ever get his ass in here, we could roll. Casey Liller says the doppelganger is usually bad omen more than a persona. Yeah. That was the typical occurrences of it before Stevenson, you know, got to develop it like this. Can we get a video on the archetype of the king? That sounds good. Also, king versus prince. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, there's the king. There's the bad king. There's the benevolent king. There are lots of archetypes on that. It'd be interesting. We could definitely talk about that. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping back between the StreamYard tab and the YouTube tab, and that gets a little confusing, but I want to make sure I don't miss Al if he's like sitting there backstage. You know, the YouTube tab is better to follow the chat on, so I want to keep checking every now and then. Werewolves are also a reminder that humans are animals. Yeah, you've got that animalistic side to you. You've got those drives. We're going to talk about some of that because Hyde brings that out, you know, Hyde. Because see, I think werewolf stories, and I haven't, you know, I'm not, you know, speaking from, I haven't just come fresh off the research and looked at every single story out there like that. But I think before before Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, your average werewolf story was more of a supernatural kind of thing. It was like the witch, someone deal with the devil or whatever, and they take on the appearance of animals or something like that. The werewolf as we know it today, even though you can trace it back to a lot of old world stories, it's really something that developed with Victorian literature, but uniquely on the American or the Hollywood's silver screen, because Dracula himself was also a werewolf. He was a vampire, but he could also take the form of a wolf. In the Bram Stoker's Dracula and stuff like that. But that tormented soul, that's something that you can really trace back to the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, which is really great. So, still no L. All right. What else? Oh yeah. Also, we would have no Incredible Hulk. Some people were talking about before how you guys were already shouting out how the Hulk was influenced partly by a great deal by the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Absolutely. Yeah, we'd have no Incredible Hulk. It's just a fascinating, and part of this is, I don't know how long Al's going to take, so might as well get into this. It's something that we can do and talk about, because there are certain things that we talked before in the last part of the study how Stevenson he was very much a short story writer, or at least a short novel writer, novella or short novel. I mean, he did write Treasure Island, Black Arrow, and stuff like that, Kidnapped and whatnot. But those are still shorter books. And he just wasn't the type of writer who was going to write one of these long epic tomes. And he eventually did, like I said in the last study, spent years and years and years writing a novel. I forget the name of it right now. I mentioned it in the last study, and it wasn't very well received because it really wasn't him using his talents to their best effect. And yet he writes this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde strange case within a weekend, I believe it was. We talked about it in the last episode. I had all those notes there relevant to that topic. Knocked that off pretty quickly, and then he burned it because his wife didn't much like it or whatever. But he eventually rewrote it down. So he wrote this pretty quickly, and this has become his enduring classic. I mean, this is the one that he's remembered for. And of course, he's remembered for Treasure Island and stuff like that too. But you think Robert Louis Stevenson, unless you're like a really big children's lit connoisseur, most likely you're gonna think The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think there's a lesson in that, as writers, because I know I have a lot of writers who come to this channel, especially these book studies, because that's one of the elements that I try and lift out of here is things we can learn as writers. But one of those things is follow your strengths. I mean, you don't want to just pigeonhole yourself, and you want to be able to grow and expand. But there are some things that you need to just realize that that's not your strength. You're not going to do that. I have no desire to sit down and try to write the great American novel. Because I want to write what my interest, where my interest lies, and where my skills set lies, and that is the supernaturalist, uncanny-ish, genre-esque, stuff like that. So you follow that, and that's where you reap your success, because that's where your talents are and everything. So another thing though is to think about. So we're talking about this idea of how it's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that really develops this wonderful interior or look inward to the psychology and how the duality of man. And let me try and find the quote. I've got it underlined because this is really, this is really the big, if you could sum up the whole book's theme, I think it would be in this passage. Let me try and find it here. I've got so many lines underlined in the story to read because it's just so great. I think it's before that. Nope, I think it's before that. See, if Al was here, he could be talking and vamping over this while I'm looking for this. He could be over there going, like I said, All right, I think I'm zeroing in on it. Okay, here we go. So let me see where I want to start with this. It's a great passage. I'm trying to find. I don't want to read too much. Well, you know what? Let me read this passage that readers would have had in their minds as they were reading Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And then I'll read you this passage from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Okay, so this is, Victorian era there. You're going to everybody's religious, whether they really truly believe it or not. Religion's a big part of their culture. They know these things. They know these readings. I'm going to read, it's kind of a lengthy passage, but it's from Romans. It's from Romans chapter 7. And I'm reading you this because this is it's a pretty famous passage. It's been kind of misinterpreted. And yes, this is the Apostle Paul really going into one of his big philosophical kind of problems and working it out. And this is sort of a chunk that like the early Gnostic heretics, would take out and try to say that it didn't matter what you did in your physical body because it's spirituality is the only real thing, so do whatever you want in your physical flesh, as long as your spirit is unsullied or whatever, all these kinds of things. But you have to kind of follow all of his philosophical reasoning out. But this passage anyway would have been very prevalent and very near in the readers of Stevenson's readers in the day. And this will help us better understand, I think, when I turn around and read the passage that I'm going to read from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in a second. So this is policy. I'm going to start at verse 14. We know that the law is spiritual, but I'm carnal, sold under sin. I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, I agree that the law is good. So then it is no longer I that do it, but sin which dwells within me. For I know that nothing good dwells within me, that is, in my flesh. I will what is right, but I cannot do it. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I that do it, but sin which dwells within me. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God, in my inmost self, but I see in my members another law at war, with the law of my mind in making me captive to the law of sin which dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from the body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I of myself serve the law of God with my mind, but with my flesh I serve the law of sin. Now again, this is Paul kind of in the middle of working out this whole philosophy and laying down his case, for what he's talking about the grace, justification in the law and such and so forth. But that idea, has been picked up by a lot of people. Certainly, your Calvinists will pick up that and run with it and whatnot. But this is a passage from the last chapter. The last little chapter is called Henry Jekyll's Full Statement of the Case. And he's talking about when he first started to pursue this idea of trying to separate out his psyche. And he says, it's kind of lengthy, but I'm going to go with it. Maybe I'll skip a little bit. Hence it came about that I concealed my pleasures, and that when I reached years of reflection and began to look round me and take stock of my progress and position in the world, I stood already committed to a profound duplicity of life. Many a man would have blazoned such irregularities as I was guilty of. But from the high views that I had set before me, I regarded and hid them with an almost morbid sense of shame. It was thus rather the exacting nature of my aspirations than any other particular degradation in my faults that made me what I was, and with even a deeper trench than in the majority of men, severed in me those provinces of good and ill which divide and compound man's dual nature. In this case, I was driven to reflect deeply and inadvertently on the hard law of life, which lies at the root of religion, and is one of the most plentiful springs of distress. Though so profound a double dealer, I was in no sense a hypocrite. Both sides of me were in dead earnest. I was no more myself when I laid aside restraint and plunged in shame than when I labored in the eye of day at the furtherance of knowledge or the relief of sorrow and suffering. And it chanced that the direction of my scientific studies, which led wholly towards the mystic and transcendental, reacted and shed a strong light on this consciousness of the perennial war among my members. So I get a lot of the same languages here, talking about the members and the struggle within. With every day, and from both sides of my intelligence, the moral and the intellectual, I thus drew steadily near to the truth, by whose partial discovery I have been doomed to such a dreadful shipwreck, that man is not truly one, but truly two. This idea here, in the Bible would talk about that as the fleshly self and the spiritual self. But what Stevenson is developing in this is going in the psychological route to where both of those selves are just in your being. And the cool thing about Jekyll and Hyde is they're revealed in different ways within his flesh. When he does take the drought and separates the Jekyll from Hyde, Hyde at first is far smaller, far condensed, misshapen because he's not let his dark side, his side that wants to go out and for nothing but self-pleasure and all of the evil appetites, he'd not let that part out and really stretch his legs. That's the part he'd been trying to repress. So that's a misshapen, it's an undergrown facet of himself. And yet Jekyll, of course, is an older man. That's what he spent most of his time on. It's interesting as the novel progresses, or the little novella progresses, once Hyde starts to take over more readily and of his own volition, certainly not even without the drought, it's basically the two sides within Jekyll really becoming more one, right? Jekyll wanted to take this formula to separate those sides out. Say, hey, wouldn't it be great if good me could do all the things good me wanted to do and didn't have to worry about temptation? And bad me could do all of the wonderful, horrible, sinful things bad me wants to do and not have to worry about repercussions of his conscience, because that's bad me. Separating those two out. But the lesson that Jekyll learns here, and it's so fascinating again, because Robert Louis Stevenson is an avowed atheist, but religion is deeply rooted within him. And as we said in the last chapter, there's so many truths to be pulled out of here. One of the biggest lessons he learns is there's no dividing the two. Whenever you shun one to try to enjoy the other, that's just going to flex the other to where it overshadows the other. And it's interesting that their memories are, a lot of incarnations of Jekyll and Hyde. Think about like the werewolf, when the man wakes up the next morning, he doesn't really remember what the wolf did. But that's not the case in the original book. Jekyll remembers every little thing Hyde did, and Hyde remembers everything that Jekyll does. So think about that. How divided are their psyches really? Because if Jekyll can continue throughout his day without a guilty conscience, remembering everything Hyde did, but he still knows, and he still said in this passage, Hyde is just as much of me as Jekyll is. So really, I think it's almost a fascinating psychological study delving into how this is the fall of Jekyll, and it's Hyde is a mask, and it's the mask he's placed on his rising dark side. Of course, at the end, when of course he becomes Hyde, and he needs the drought. Suddenly, then he needs the drought to turn back into Jekyll, where at first he needed the drought to turn into Hyde. Initially, Hyde takes over and over again. Hyde's inevitable. He's flexed that Hyde muscle too many times, and Hyde is who he is now. And it's it's a dark exploration. It bears out a lot of thinking and whatnot. So let me check out the chat here. I feel like I've pretty much gone as far as I can go without delving through the book, and I'm not prepared to do that without Al here to bounce ideas off of and to go through, because that's the format I had prepped for. If I had prepped doing this by myself, I could have done that. But so I don't really know how much farther I can go with that. But let me check in with the chat there, because I was kind of going off and prattling on rather lengthily there. So let me check in, and then we'll see where old Al is here. Can you do some more archetype vids on villains? Yes, I'm definitely going to do more archetype vids on villains, Mohammed. That was the series I kind of started there, so I need to go back to that and pick it up. Yeah. Casey Lurk says there's one good guy werewolf story that's very old. Is it the that's not really a good guy werewolf. The Werewolf of Paris, I think. Is that the novel I talked about last year that I read? It was actually quite good. It was pretty much the werewolf classic that we have. You think Mary Shelley's Frankenstein for Frankenstein, Bram Stoker for Dracula. I think it was called The Werewolf of Paris. I need to go back and double check though. Owen Lister said, I personally think werewolf stories work better for anti-heroes than villains. What do you mean by that? I'm trying to comprehend anti-hero, because do you mean like the sympathetic, like the man is the wolf is, yeah, I just don't know what you mean by that. I'm trying to wrap my head around that so I can see what I think. Casey Scott, vampire and werewolves, be cool to talk about. Just as long as not mentioned. Wasn't mentioned till you got here, Casey Scott. Casey Lork, there was the one guy, I think, who claimed after the standard witch interrogation that he was in fact a werewolf, but he claimed that that we fought Satan in hell every year. I think there was, if you're talking about the French individual who he was actually found to be quite mad, and I believe he was found guilty, but he was actually taken in by, I think if I remember correctly, he was taken in by a bishop. But he was quite mad and actually attacked people even as a human being, thinking he's a wolf. That was a famous case. I'm just blanking on his name right now like an idiot because I'm all fumbled and thrown off of track here because Al's not here with me. Green Lion Girl says, I try to write what I would like to read. That might be why my stories are all over the place. Well, I mean, there's a balance between you need to be true to yourself and to your gifts, and then you also need to hone those gifts, right? So you can't just, it's my gift to write with poor punctuation and no structure. Well, no, that's not a gift. That's a problem that you need to work on, But taking the direction, that you want to take in terms of taste is what you go for. Oh yeah, Edward talking about the gift. He said, "Yeah, thank you a lot, Edward. I forgot to respond to that. I appreciate the gift you're sending me. That's pretty cool. I can't wait to see it." Paladin Demo said, "Alchemy was considered mystical before the precursor of chemistry." Alchemy was the precursor of chemistry. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about these books too, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, certainly Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is a little bit before this. That's part of the fear and the impetus behind these books is there's a general anxiety over how far science is going. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is written in a time where you've got medical students stealing cadavers just so they can actually dissect them and learn about the human anatomy. Today, that's, par for the course. But back then, that was considered horrible blasphemy, and it was terrifying to people. And then, even today with Gene, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. What I'm looking for. There's cloning. There's all kinds of gene studies and stuff like that. And things are happening. But yeah, every time there's an advancement in medicine or science or whatever, there's an anxiety over, how should we be going that far? Isn't that playing God? Should we not be, taking that route? So that's this nothing new. It's old, and it's that was the part of the anxiety surrounding the creation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And this for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, this is part of Victorian London is heavily classed. It's a society of manners, and we talked about that in the last half when Hyde tramples down that little girl. They don't tell him and appeal to his sense of conscience and how could you have done such a horrible thing. They tell him, we're going to make a stink and you'll never be able to show your face in the world again. Your reputation will be what's damning, So there's that idea. And that's why I love to point out, even though it took the story in a lot of places that the book doesn't, it's still really well done story in its own right, which is that operetta of the Jekyll and Hyde. There's so many songs. In fact, there's one song called The Facade, which is the people of London singing about how society's all a facade, and every man could be a killer behind that mask they wear on the street and so forth. And that's definitely at play here. That's one of the anxieties. What is it? What makes a good man? What makes a gentleman? Is it just that title? Because half the people with that title are cutthroats, when no one's looking and that kind of thing. So that's one of the anxieties. And then you're talking about alchemy to chemistry. I don't know a lot about the state of chemistry and the state of that field of science in those days, but I'm sure there's something to play there. Muhammad said, I guess he's just giving himself more time to be sinful rather than splitting his identities. It's kind of like saying that you don't have any time to do what you want to do in the day. Yeah, I think it's my reading of it, and I kind of get a little bit of a different reading each time I go through it, or a little bit deeper each time I go through it. And it is almost like he's trying to assuage his guilt. He's saying, if I separate us out into two physical beings, well, then I'm not culpable for whatever he does. But you still have the memory, and you're still admitting that he's just as much you as you are him, as you are you. So it's just it's kind of playing games, kind of a mental gymnastics way of trying to justify your actions. So I think you're onto something there. Professor Geek's Shenanigans says, Professor Geek, would have you ever gone over the Universal monsters like you are now for Jekyll and Hyde? We did go over Dracula in general last year. I don't think we did Frankenstein, did we? For Monstober, we did vampires in general. We did do a long stream on Dracula with the fan man here, but no, I mean, yeah, we'll definitely get to eventually doing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I'm leaving off Bram Stoker's Dracula because I know Fan Man, that's like his baby, so he wants to do that one day. So we'll give him a certain amount of time to do the book study. If he's got to keep putting it off, we might just jump on it. But we'll give him first dibs. That's certainly fair. Elijah Brown said, "Come on, Prof, you're self-sufficient." Well, thank you. Yeah, I've definitely prattled on a bit here, going over a lot of the stuff I was going to go over here. Casey Lark said, trying to hold the monster at arm's length is still holding the monster. That's very, very true. Very good, good way of putting that. Absolutely. Definitely. Yep. So let's see what we've got here. Yep. I've been rolling for 30 minutes exactly. Big Al's nowhere to be seen. I don't think he's going to be here tonight. I don't know what's going on. He hasn't even messaged me back on IM. For all I know, his computer just finally gave up the ghost because of all of the unsafe unsafe intercourse he's been having with the internet as of late. I don't know what's going on. So but yeah, like I said, that's about all I've got planned for that I can sit here and do by myself. I mean, other than that, we really just I pulled out some of the very relevant points. Usually we'll go through and we'll talk about the events and the happenings of the story, but that's something that this isn't a book summary, it's a book study, so we'll kind of go through that as we go through. But it is interesting. I guess I will just wrap up with a couple things. It's interesting the way the end of the story is told. You've got Utterson, who is our very first way in, right? He was our perception in, because Utterson was the one who is his cousin is telling Utterson the story in the very first chapter. So we, like Utterson, are hearing the story. He's our perception, our main perception anyway. We jump around perceptions here and there with some of the letters and whatnot, but we return to Utterson, and it's Utterson that receives a visit from Poole, Jekyll's butler. It's Utterson that goes there to the building. They discover, they force their way into the cabinet. They discover Hyde, freshly just suicide, having committed suicide. They think he's murdered Jekyll. They ransack the cabinet there. They find these two letters. Well, they find one letter. I'm sorry. It's the confession basically of Dr. Jekyll. But Hyde doesn't. Utterson doesn't want to read it until he's gone back and read Dr. Lanyon's letter. Remember, Dr. Lanyon had written him a letter too, said do not open unless Henry Jekyll disappears or Henry Jekyll dies. So now he's got both of them. So he goes back and he's got one letter, but he has to go back and grab the other. So there's that theme of duplicity and that theme of duality again. And we finally get the tales and everything, all the secrets, all of the mysteries are solved, and all of the truths come to light when these two letters are brought together and pieced together like a puzzle. Again, it's Jekyll and Hyde coming together, right? So that's fascinating. And that's when you get the whole story. That's when you get Dr. Lanyon's account, of him seeing Hyde and that, the shock bringing about death eventually. That's when you get the idea of, or when you get Jekyll's confession and Jekyll going through and talking about his impulse to do this experiment and how the experiment backfired so many times. I do think it's fascinating to hear from his own mouth, his reaction to when he tried to put away Hyde, and he tries, nope, I'm going to be a good person now. I'm going to, I'm going to be religious now. I'm going to be all these things, but he didn't address the sin. He didn't address his problem. He just tried to shut it away. He just tried to pretend it never happened to escape any consequences, right? Oh, that was Hyde. Hyde's gone now. Ha ha. See, it's just me, Jekyll again. No, that's why it didn't work. And since he didn't address Hyde, since he didn't, put to death that flesh, so to speak, it reared its head again. It would not go away quietly, because that's something he had flexed and exercised too much, and he had to, he couldn't just deny it at that point. So it's a fascinating way to play it out. But that is really about it. That's about as far as I can go. Honestly, to be 100%, I don't know what else I could say if Al even did show up right now. I feel like I pretty much covered most of what I was going to say. As he talks, I'm sure I could have found out some rediscovered some more things from my notes or gone a little bit deeper into certain passages and whatnot. But that's about it. So I did get a message from him here. He says, my computer is tagging StreamYard as a phishing site. I don't know. Did he just get a new driver software? Why is this all of a sudden happening? I think there's more up than this. I think it has to do with his computer dealing with so much crap right now with all of his downloads. That's my guess anyway. But I'll talk to him after I get off here, and we'll figure this out. So hopefully we got to figure it out for tomorrow. Damn it, because we need Big Al for the office hours. That's definitely a must. So yeah, that's it, guys. I'm sorry, but thanks for hanging out. 22 watching. I did not expect that tonight, especially on a night where most people are doing their reactions to the Star Wars trailer. We do have 22 people in here now, and I'm showing 3 thumbs up. So you could give me a thumbs up for being left on my own and doing the best. Oh no, I got 9. I had to refresh. 9 thumbs up. Well, that's pretty good. But you can give me another thumbs up. Those of you who are holdouts, did the best I could. Did the best I could without Big Al the Crutch. So he's he's listening along. He can't jump in. He just said, "Bite me, hippie." I don't know why he's calling me a hippie lately. I don't know what that's about. I was giving him a hard time for not liking Star Wars Ep 9. He's like, "Bite me, hippie." Or no, giving him a hard time about liking the Star Wars Ep 9 trailer. But now I'm getting into fare for tomorrow's office hours, so I'll leave that there. That'll be all kinds of fun. So, thanks for hanging out, guys. Appreciate it. Hopefully, we got into some points of interest at least for you. And I will try to, I was going to try and put all these studies together, like put these two parts together. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what I can salvage out of this. But fun. I know I told you at the beginning that I was going to announce the next book and all this kind of stuff, but I think that's just something you need to announce with somebody there with you so Al can react to it and everything. So I'm going to wait. I'm sorry, but I'm going to wait until Al gets here tomorrow for the office hours to announce the book and to announce next week's or this Saturday rather's rewatch. It's something easily attained if you have streaming services and stuff like that. So no worries on that. And the book is something easily obtained too. Most of you probably already have it anyway. So that's what we're going to do. Sorry. It's just better. It's just better, with somebody to play off of in that tense. I know I'm a tease. I'm sorry, Owen Lister. It's one that you guys will be very happy about. Let me just say that. It's not some off the wall thing you've never heard of. It's something I've even heard people ask for before. It's something you guys will be very, very pleased about. Don't worry. Talking about the book. So there we go. But Computer Robot says Professor Geek is so awkward when he's doing. Oh no, you can't retract that, Computer Robots. I saw that. No, I saw that. Said I'm so awkward when I'm doing a book study on my own. So please never do it again. And I'm halfway through it. Computer Robot's like, message retracted. No, mean girl. Come on up in here and own your comments. All right. So thanks for popping in. Yeah, it was. I think we got some good stuff out anyway. So be back tomorrow, hopefully with Al figuring out what the hell's going on. And let me go talk to him now and see if we can figure that out. But thanks for hanging out there with me anyhow. And I guess I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Fingers crossed, guys. Fingers crossed we get Al straightened out and he can be back here with us tomorrow. We'll certainly give you updates on Twitter as to when we got that straightened out, when it's all, everybody can breathe a sigh of relief. We'll all be there. It's all good. So thanks for watching. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.